This is going to be great. I'm glad you're tuning in. Joe's one of my favorite guests. Last time I almost got a drinking problem when I let Joe on the show because he scared me to death.
Just coffee this morning. Just coffee. Nothing heavier.
It's so great to see you. It's great.
Great to see you too. Congratulations on your show. It's terrific. I loved listening to this first segment about what's at stake for progressives, and I'm looking forward to contributing with my little piece of it.
Great. I'm so glad that you're here because last week when I saw in the Times that they reported that over 70 senior national security officials called Trump unfit to lead and then outlined their support for Joe Biden and why he was unfit to lead. Well, I couldn't think of anyone better than you, Joe Cirincione, National Security Analyst, author with over 35 years of experience working on these issues in D.C. Couldn't think of anyone better than you to come on and, scare us a little bit more. I mean, what reasons do the 70 NSA officials cite that Trump is unfit to lead?
Yeah, Julianna, this is a great question, and it's one of the first letters that have come out from senior Republican national security leaders, but it's not the only one. There have been several since then, and maybe we can discuss those as well. Mm-hmm. But basically, they are deeply worried that President Trump has shattered America's alliances, has increased the isolation of America in the world, is coddling up to dictators, is perhaps, consciously or unconsciously advancing the agenda of Russia's Vladimir Putin and other reasons. So if you're a progressive, you're watching this show and you're progressive, what should you think about this? How should you feel when a group of conservative leaders that you probably have disagreed with in the past suddenly back Joe Biden? How should that make you feel? Well, here's the way to think about it. There are basically, three camps of national security ideas in this country. There's the progressive wing, and I'm part of that, you're part of that believes that we should have a responsible, less warlike national security policy, cut the military budget, lead with diplomacy, not weapons, okay? Mm-hmm. Then there's the mainstream view of national security, and then there's the conservative view of national security that includes people who have gotten us into the war with Iraq, people who would like to start a war with Iran. That's the spectrum. And then there's Donald Trump, and he is off the spectrum. He is not in that frame. He has got this idiosyncratic, autocratic, America first, that is America last sort of foreign policy. And that's what the national security leaders in this country are now united against. Left, center, right. There was actually a united front to try to block Donald Trump from continuing as president. Some of them believe that he is actually an agent of Vladimir Putin. Some believe that he's just a useful idiot. But all of them believe that he is destroying America's standing in the world, weakening our military, weakening our alliances, making America less safe. And now they're speaking up. And as one of them put it the other day, look, they have a lot of differences with Joe Biden. He wouldn't have been their first choice for president, but this election is a binary choice. It's either Trump or Biden, and faced with that binary choice, they are choosing Joe Biden.
Do you think that these letters are going to affect voters, and specifically military voters who, work closely with the NSA?
Yes. And let me give you some examples. This is already having a ripple effect. This letter came out shortly before Joe Biden accepted the Democratic Party's nomination to be president. Last week, right before Donald Trump did his spectacle on the South Lawn of the White House, you had a letter from 100 former staffers of John McCain. 100 McCain staffers signed a similar letter warning that they could not vote for Trump, warning people not to vote for Trump. And also last week, an interesting group in Arizona, women in Arizona, McCain supporters, conservative Republicans, started an ad campaign against Donald Trump in Arizona. Arizona is a swing state. So this is not just an abstract debate about what you think about U.S. national security or how you can sway some people in the Beltway. No, this is a national issue. That group of women in Arizona could help tilt Arizona for Joe Biden. and in so doing could guarantee that he becomes the president of the United States. So there are real political stakes involved in this policy dispute.
We're speaking with Joe Cirincione, the fellow with the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Can we talk about just, they gave the same warning 4 years ago, and it didn't help. In fact, Donald Trump twisted it so that he could say, look, I'm not an establishment guy. I didn't get us into Iraq. These are the same guys who got us into Iraq. Do you believe that this time it's different? Yes,
for two reasons. Three, it's broader. There are many, many more people involved. Two, it's deeper. There are many senior people who did not speak out last time that are speaking out this time. And number three, you have a track record. Before was a warning. And you go back and you can see back in 2016, many people were warning about this. Well, now we've had 3.5 years with Trump. It's proven. It's fact. You can see what he's done. Let me give you an example. General Mike Hayden, a former director of national intelligence. I know Mike Hayden, a Republican. He was a backer of the Iraq War. He and I have talked over the years. We disagree over many things, including this. But on this issue, there he is, Mike Hayden. On this one,
we're ready.
Yeah, very good, studio. Very good. And they standing next to John Negroponte. So another person who signed this letter. These people are dead set against. They were critical of Trump, wary of Trump 4 years ago. Now they are downright horrified, scared about what it means for the national security of the country, scared about what it means for the future of the country. And Mike Hayden's criticism go deeper than national security. He's very concerned about what Donald Trump is doing at home. You were talking about brown shirts just a little while ago. These senior officials are worried about this, are worried about this slide towards autocracy. Some of them also spoke out against the use of these paramilitary forces, first in Lafayette Square, then in Portland, Oregon. Now Trump wants to bring them into cities all around America. This is the beginning of this, a militia movement that's loyal to Trump. Some state agents like the Border Patrol, for example, or the Bureau of Prisons that have never been used in this kind of role before, but Trump is using them. Some are these armed far-right militia groups that you see in Oregon and now other places, Wisconsin, etc. This is what these national security leaders are worried about, and their differences with the Democrats pale to their differences with Trump. I'm very encouraged by this. I think this is exactly what we need, a united front against this neo-fascism and war mentality of Donald Trump.
If by some horrible coup, Donald Trump, I don't think it's going to be a win. I can't imagine that he has the kind of support that they're reporting that he has. 35% in some areas. What is wrong with our country? It's insane.
Yeah.
That it should be like, 12% the Nazis and the KKK versus everybody else. Anyway, that's kind of off the topic there. But, the Times piece said that a handful of mid-level officials who served under Trump, but not a lot of the big names in national security who were in his administration only to be fired and then resign, like Tillerson, the former Secretary of State. And, John Kelly, McMaster, Bolton, none of those guys signed it. What do you think about that?
Well, I know several of these gentlemen, and let me say they like to act on their own. Mm-hmm. Here's an example. Colin Powell didn't sign that letter. Colin Powell doesn't really like doing group letters. He feels like he's got his own brand. He's, as one of them once said to me, look, I don't have a lot of money. All I have is my reputation. It's very precious to me. So they're very careful about how they do things like this. But Colin Powell came out and gave a speech to the Democratic National Convention. I mean, he took a stand. He just didn't sign that letter. You don't see Stephen Hadley, former national security advisor, for example, on that, a lesser known name, but very important in national security circles. But I suspect you will hear from Stephen Hadley as this race comes down to the finish line. Will you hear from Kelly, when you hear from Tillerson, we famously heard what Tillerson thought of Trump, that he was a bleeping moron.
Yeah, a bleeping moron, not even just, a
bleeping moron. So we know what they think. Will he make a statement? I suspect they might. And here's the other part. A lot of these people are using, their statements or their condemnation of Trump for a more leveraged moment when they might be able to actually make a difference, where it might, make a splash in the news cycle, might tilt a state one way or the other. So we haven't heard the last of this. This is actually a growing movement. Republicans against Trump. It is picking up steam. You've seen the ads from the Lincoln Project on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of money going behind this. There's a lot of organization. And a lot of this is aimed at not just defeating Trump, but at rebuilding the GOP. As David Rothkopf tweeted out today, that when 86% of the Republican Party support Trump, that's his current support rating in the Republican Party, 94% of Democrats strongly support Joe Biden, about 82%, 84% support Trump. Something is wrong with the Republican Party. Something is profoundly wrong. This goes beyond Trump. And a lot of what you're seeing is not just about national security, but about staking out the ground to remake the Republican Party after Trump loses. Inshallah.
I'm looking forward to that after Trump loses. The national security advisors and officials that we're talking about here, how concerned are they about Trump when it comes to climate change and the global effects of climate?
The military and the national security establishment is actually on message here. They see climate change as a national security threat. The Navy sees their ports around the world threatened by rising ocean levels. This is immediate. This is front door stuff for these. There's been numerous statements, commissions, panels that have warned about the migrations that will come from grasslands turning into deserts, for example, and what will happen when hundreds of millions of people are forced to leave their ancestral land, etc. So they are aware of this. They see solving the climate problem as part of an integrated national security plan. Donald Trump is not in that camp. I mean, he doesn't really have a strategy about anything, but of the issues that he cares about, of the issues that he thinks he can make money on the issues that can support him personally, climate change is not one of them.
If Donald Trump does lose his coup attempt in November, and I do say that on purpose, and Joe Biden is elected, we still have those several months between November and January. Is the national, where people who have been talking, and even you and I spoke last time about the concern about Trump being a loose cannon and what he might do during those months, does the national security advisors, are they concerned about this as well? Are you hearing anything about that?
Yes, very much so. There's a Star Trek movie called The Undiscovered Territory. And this is November, December, January. We've never been in this kind of situation before. There are no rule books for this. There are no guidelines for this. So people are deeply worried about what could happen in various scenarios. One, say the early voting appears to show Trump winning. He could declare the election over and sow confusion among. Two, the count drags out for a long time. If we end up with a Bush v. Gore situation where there's elaborate recounts in states, what do those armed militia groups do then? What is Trump's mass movement? Not the Republican mass movement. This is a Trump movement. What kind of damage can they cause? Can they actually grind the election to a halt? What if scenario number three, that it's clear that Trump lost, but he refuses to accept the results of the election and refuses to leave? There are some members of Congress that are already written to the Pentagon, already written to General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, seeking his assurances that he would help remove the former president, President Trump, from the White House on January 21st. This is not really...
Did he say that was okay? Did he say he would do that? I want assurance.
Well, this is dangerous territory. I mean, you don't want the military removing the civilian leader of the country.
What we're trying to do when it's Trump. I mean,
well, you see, that's where it gets a little tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we want to do it for our guy. We want to do it when they're on our side. So, so you can see right there, this is a national security debate. What role does the military have in upholding the Constitution? Are they the main agents for doing this? How can we make sure that the military stays apart from all this, really? So we don't see more Lafayette squares. We don't see a general in combat fatigues strutting across Lafayette Square with the President of the United States after they've gassed and shot at peaceful protesters. So yes, people are thinking about this, and they're also thinking the bigger picture. How do you reassure our allies that the United States is still stable during this period? That this is not a time for our adversaries to seek advantage of the United States during this 3 months of instability, that we still are a country that ensures a peaceful transition of power. All this is up for grabs. This is undiscovered territory. We have never been here before. People are deeply worried about the constitutional aspects of it, the peace and security aspects of it, the international relations aspects of it.
Vice President Mike Pence, I think, I'm also concerned about his religious views and national security in terms of some of the religious views espoused by his folks have to do with bringing on the apocalypse so Jesus can come back. You recently wrote about Kamala Harris's national security record. Talk about that and how much better she is than, end of the world Pence. What do you think her impact on national security and her record on national security, what impact will that have on the election?
I'll get to that in just a second, but you talked about Pence. There's also Pompeo. Remember his speech from Jerusalem, violated the Hatch Act, violated regulations. Julianna.
Was that dog whistling?
Yeah.
I'm in Jerusalem.
So why is he in Jerusalem? He's talking to the evangelists, the evangelical community. He's signaling his support for the rapture and what that means. So, Julianna, were you raised a Roman Catholic? I was.
Unfortunately, it was.
Yeah. So this rapture thing is like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, we don't.
Right? So
yeah.
This isn't part of our religion. No. We don't. But there is a certain religious segment in the United States, the evangelicals, who believe that the second coming of Christ will be when there is a massive war. And all the Jews in Israel, all the Jews have gathered in Israel, number one, and two, that they've all converted to Christianity. And that's the second coming. Christ will come there. And so he's motivated by this religious view. It's so odd to see American leaders practicing this. But yes, this is an extremely bizarre development, and we should understand how profoundly bizarre Mike Pompeo is. But back to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is sort of the, they say it was a safe choice, even though it's the first time a woman of color has been nominated by a major party, first time in a very long time that a woman's been on the vice presidential ticket. And if she assumed office, it would be a first. Still, she was seen as safe. Why? Because she's sort of a moderate on national security issues in the party, a moderate in general. Think of her as to the left of Susan Rice, but to the right of Elizabeth Warren, so she's really in the center. She is generally favored a foreign policy of restraint, of ending the endless wars, for example, of having a reasonable defense budget. She doesn't emphasize the military as a solution to our problems. She hasn't engaged a lot in national security issues, so she's still something of an unknown there. But in general, her impulses focus on securing the U.S. national security assets, resources, money, budgets, people, attention for the domestic problems we have. And the international problems are seen as climate change, wealth inequity, and preserving U.S. leadership in the world and preserving the international institutions that we helped create in the 75 years since the end of World War II. So that's a very moderate, fairly traditional national security outlook. Insofar as the Biden-Harris administration engages in pandemic relief, in climate change, in the quest for ending racial inequity, so social justice, insofar as they do that, that invariably is going to put pressure to cut the defense budget. It's at historic levels, $740 billion, an enormous amount of money, decades after the Cold War ended. So you can see there'll be a natural pull in the party, in the governing coalition, to cut the defense budget and to redirect some of those assets towards our domestic crises. And I think Kamala Harris will be in the lead of that.
Joe, what are they doing with all that money?
Since
we're not at war. I mean, you think when there's a war.
Here's a couple of figures. Yeah, there's a war. Even though Trump, here's the good thing about Trump, he hasn't gotten us in any new wars. So you got to say that. I mean, he hasn't. He's increased the U.S. military presence around the world. He said he was going to end the endless wars. There are actually more troops in the Middle East now, for example, than when he took office. He's increased the defense budget. Remember, for Trump, all this is about business. All this is about money. So he has poured money into the military budget. He's increased it by about $135 billion annually from Obama's last budget. So Obama's last budget was about $606 billion, still a lot, an historically high level. Trump has increased it to $740. He spent about $2.5 trillion total on the military since he's taken office. What's he doing with that? What's the point of this? It's about sales. He's so excited that he can sell arms to Saudi Arabia. He doesn't care that they're used to kill innocent Yemeni men, women, and children. He's concerned about the sales. So for him, all of this is transactional.
He also wants to make sure that the military has enough money to stay at his expensive hotels when they're flying here and there, right?
Well, yes, and that his defense contractor friends are making money off of this. So Boeing's making money, and Northrop Grumman's making money, and it's all business. It's not really about national security. It's about making money and making sure that those sectors of the ruling elite back him and not his opponent.
We're speaking with Joe Cirincione today. I'm really happy that you were able to join us. Joe, you can follow Joe on Twitter at Cirincione. I'm going to spell it Cirincione.
Yeah, just the way it says down there. That's great.
Yeah, right. Okay, before we go, I would like for you to paint a picture.
Well, that's the first time I've seen Distinguished Fellow at the Quincy Institute. I just joined them yesterday.
Well, we're very on top of things.
Thank you.
Are you not with Ploughshares anymore?
I stepped down as the president of Ploughshares Fund. This is a global security foundation I headed for 12 years. I've been in Washington for about 35 years, and I just didn't want to run a project or a staff or an organization anymore. I just want to kick back a little bit, write, discuss, talk with you.
Come with me. Congratulations. You did a wonderful, and thank you for the work that you did there. I'm happy that you have a new post that you're happy about it, and I feel like you'll be freer to come on our program and scare the pants off of us. Although most of us aren't wearing pants in these Zoom calls anyway.
I'm happy to wake up with you any morning. Just let me know.
Joe, can you use the last brief time that we have here to paint a picture in terms of national security of what it looks like if Trump is re-elected? We've got a pandemic, we've got climate change, we have global instability in a number of areas, as you've already mentioned. I just would like your thoughts about what we're facing with a president who won't be going for re-election. So he's even more untethered than he is now.
All organizations like Ploughshares, like any organization you have out there, they all do planning documents. And a lot of us have started to do a plan B, So what do you do if Trump is elected? This is a very intimidating project. I don't know anybody who's actually done one. They don't want to think about it. It's horrifying. It's complicated. And there are so many variables. There's so much unknown about what he would do because Trump does not have his own sort of traditional ideology. He's impulsive is a kind word for it. Erratic is another word. Insane is another word for it. So it's very hard to lay out what that looks like. But let me put it this way. I wouldn't call Trump a fascist, but he is on the road to fascism. This is where he is moving. He doesn't see any separation between his own interest and the government's interest. He doesn't see that he is a guest in the White House. He thinks this is his house. He owns it, that he owns the instruments of state power, that these are his to do as he sees fit. And he surrounded himself by people who are supporting this, like William Barr, who say, yes, the president can do whatever he wants. Yes, the president is above the law. This is autocracy. This is not what our Constitution says. This is not what our founders intended. But this is where he's leading this role. I don't know what Vladimir Putin has on him, if anything. and I don't know if he's actually an agent of Putin, but if he were an agent of Putin, this is what he would be doing. He has isolated America from the world. Let me put it this way. If Donald Trump is elected, there's been a lot of talk among the European leaders that they will start to look at the United States as an adversary nation, similar to how they view Russia. Somebody you have to do business with, somebody whose power you recognize, but not an ally, not someone who is on your side. So you could see Donald Trump completely rupture the 75-year-old NATO alliance, completely separate the United States from our allies, except in transactional relationships, the way he thinks of them, U.S. versus an individual country, U.S.-Japan relations, U.S.-British relations, but not U.S. alliance relations. You will see the military budget go up. You will see reckless behavior around the world that will not necessarily be taken to start a war, but which could lead us to stumble into wars in various locations. The Persian Gulf, for example, the South China Sea, for example. And remember, this is the last thing I'll leave you with. And I'm sorry, maybe you do want to drink. This insane individual has sole unfettered authority over the nuclear arsenal of the United States. Donald Trump can launch 1 or 10 or 1,000 nuclear weapons anytime he wants for whatever reason he wants. This is seriously disturbing reality that we don't talk about because there's so much else to talk about.
That's why I bring you here, because I feel like this is this is like very important. And so we have our one issue voters, abortion. Hey, abortion's not going to be a big deal. No one's going to care about it in the least when 4 cities in the U.S. have been blown off the map because of a nuclear war.
That's right. That's right. Get rid of this guy. Then you can talk about reproductive rights. We can have our debate. And that's basically just to make this full circle. That's what these Republican national security leaders are saying. We have a much bigger issue here than how much we should spend on defense. We're talking about the security of the nation as a whole, whether we stay a democracy, whether our alliances prevail. Let's get rid of Donald Trump so we can do that. And then within that, we can debate and fine tune the policy.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Happy to be here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. You're watching act.tv. We've been speaking with Joe Cirincione, a distinguished fellow with the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Look over there, and you can get the Twitter. It's Cirincione. That's how you follow him. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to ACT-TV's channel. We're bringing you this kind of conversation, which you're not probably hearing in a lot of other places. So please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and you can follow ACT-TV across platforms. We're on Twitch. We're on Facebook. We're all over the place. I'm Julianna Forlano. We will be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a great guest that we've been trying to get on for a little while here, which I'm excited about. He is from the Postal Workers Union. Do you think that's important? I think it is. Mark Diamondstein is the president of the American Postal Workers Union. He'll be on tomorrow, along with Steve Horn, journalist from the Real News Network. Steve is originally from Kenosha and has a lot to say about what's going on in that situation, in addition to talking about what's happening with the environment. So don't forget to tune in. We are here on Facebook Live starting at about 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, wherever you're watching, please put in a comment. It really helps, or a hello or whatever. And I wish you the best. Have a great day.